All right. Hi. Thanks everybody for joining. It's been an interesting week. We have a lot of activities going on, and I'm happy to be here. And I'm happy that DQ invited me to talk. When we first started discussing this potential talk, this is probably like September. It's like, what does smaller enterprise companies actually mean, and how can I provide any kind of guidance on that? So that's what we're going to talk about today. First off, I should say my name is Ted Drake, and I'm the Global Accessibility Leader at Intuit, and my personal pronouns are he, him, his. So for today's talk, I'm kind of focusing on people that are starting a journey of building an accessibility program at a small enterprise company, or those that have inherited one, or just they feel like, how can I make our project better? First, let me define a smaller enterprise company. It would be a company that probably has 3 or less employees that are dedicated to accessibility. So you may have a company with 1 person and that's their job is accessibility. I would call that a smaller enterprise company. But I think if you have a team of 20 people that are working on accessibility full time, that's probably not going to fit into this talk, although there's probably still some good stuff you're going to learn. So first off, I'm coming to you from Palm Springs, California. So I want to respectfully acknowledge the Coahuila Nation, who have stewarded this land, Palm Springs, throughout the generations. So let's think about getting started. You've just been hired, or maybe you just got promoted to becoming an accessibility leader. How do you get going? It can be daunting. When I joined Intuit, the accessibility program had already been started by Lori Samuels. I believe she's now with Charter or Verizon. I can't remember. I'm sorry. Lori's moved a couple places in the last few years, but she had already started the accessibility program at Intuit, and she worked directly with DQ, and Glenda Sims helped Lori. The two of them kind of established education, some online training, testing. So and Lori had already started a project for making QuickBooks Desktop accessible. I came in from Yahoo. I co-founded the Yahoo Accessibility Lab. And while I was at Yahoo, I worked very closely with Intuit's head of central technology, Cheryl Aranha. So when I came to Intuit, Cheryl already knew me well. She managed all of the central technology at Intuit. So she gave me the freedom to figure out what needed to be done to take Intuit's accessibility program to another level. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today is what are some of the things that we did that worked for us? I'll probably touch on a few things that didn't work for us. Because the whole point is that when you're a small enterprise company, when you're a team of 1 or 2 people, you have a lot of work to do, and you have to be I don't know, innovative. You have to be invigorated. You have to come to work every day thinking, I'm going to make a challenge today. I'm going to fix something today. And as these things happen, you're going to build up. And a year later, you're going to look back and say, wow, I can't believe we did everything. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'll also say, if you can't see this presentation, some of the slides have images. And if the images are important, I will let you know. This is an image from a Starbucks I found, and it's a automated door switch meant for people that use wheelchairs or have their hands full or use crutches. But they put a big sign up that says push here to open and has all these arrows pointing to that automated door switch. And this was done because of COVID. So they didn't want people grabbing the door handle all the time. They preferred people to use their elbows or something and press the automated door opener. So it's a great way of showing how assistive technology can be repurposed for everyone. So what does your company need? And here, this is one of the things you really have to understand as you're starting this project. Every company is unique. So you can't take the accessibility team from BBC, let's say. They have a really different need set than Intuit. You can't take something from like Wells Fargo or a financial company where they have very strong regulations. Neither of those companies are appropriate for me to say, I'm going to take everything they've done and put it into it. You have to look at what is your company. Is it highly regulated like a financial company? Do you have to continually put out conformance documentations? Is it a fast moving startup? Are you just trying to basically build everything to the beginning and teach engineers that you don't have to do accessibility at the end, that it's not faster to use something like Angular and just not even think about it? Is it a mature company? For instance, maybe it's a company that's mostly known for brick and mortar, and then they're switching over to an online company. Or maybe it's a company that's had their websites for a while, but they realize it's now time to start transitioning to new platforms. Is it a new direction company? Let's say you're working for, let's say it's a landscaping company, and they've decided that they're going to go into a new direction. They're going to start building swimming pools. And so in that process, they have a lot of the foundation, but they want to create a new branding. They want to create new websites. They want to create an online store, things like that. And further, another option is maybe you're in a company that's going public and they've been able to do stuff quick and fast without much oversight. But knowing that they're going public is going to bring a higher level of scrutiny. So they want to start getting things in order. Think about what is your company. And when you understand your company's needs, that's going to help you from now on building the foundation. Oh, I will say, going back to the company, one of the key things that I recommend is going to your legal team and understand their concerns and requirements. And that's going to help you establish your structure and direction. For instance, when I joined Intuit, I went to the legal team, started a friendship with my key legal colleague, and I asked him, what are your priorities? And he told me right off, priorities for Intuit would be any product that someone pays for. And the other so that would mean QuickBooks is a higher priority than, let's say, a website that we're building for a campaign. He also said careers. Someone needs to be able to, if they want to work for Intuit, we need to make sure that the career site is accessible. So that he gave me a list of things that were of a higher priority, not that there was nothing that was of no priority, but what were we going to focus on first? And that really helps you understand from the legal perspective, but also they can give you insight into the company's priorities. And another thing is stakeholders. I'm a firm believer. On the picture right now is our CEO, Sasan. I really believe that as an accessibility team, you should be good friends with leadership. I'm not saying that I'm going to sit down with Sasan and have coffee every day. But when Sasan sees me, I expect him to know who I am. And furthermore, if I have anything that he needs to know, I'm going to tell him very early, because I never want him to be surprised by anything. So that's not just Sasan, it's not just our CEO, but that's our CTO, that's our product business leaders, that's my manager, that's my manager's manager. Your goal is to not be some mysterious person that sits in a building. Your goal is to be that person that everybody knows to go to. And you're the bearer of good news most of the time, but you're also the bearer of news that this is a concern and you need to know about it. So some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about over the next few slides, think about how this information is going to help you send those messages to your leaders. And I've been really happy working with Sasan. I went to him a few years ago. Now, this isn't something that happens overnight, but a few years ago, I went to him and I said, I think we should partner with IRA. And I think the partnership with IRA would be great for our mission to power prosperity. So I would like us to be able to offer IRA to QuickBooks customers so that if they ever had a need to use QuickBooks, they'd be able to call up IRA and then IRA would do that. And Sasan asked me, he's like, well, how many people is that? And I thought, well, you know, I don't know, maybe we'd get 100 calls or something like that. And he's like, no, that's not big enough. If we're going to do this, let's make it bigger. And that's why with Sasan's direction, we went back to IRA and we created the small business promotion where any blind or low vision entrepreneur, business owner can use IRA to do any task that's related to running their business. They don't have to be a QuickBooks customer. And that's the kind of spirit that you want from your CEO, from your leadership, is that they trust you, they respect your guidance, and they don't hear from you once every 3 years, but they hear from you maybe every 2 months whenever there's something they should know. I think part for me was knowing Cheryl, my boss at the time. She was a high level, and she gave me the confidence also to just say, well, just go to them and tell them. I also think it's important to have a 1, 3, and 5 year goals. Now, I will say that when I joined Intuit, I didn't have 1, 3, and 5 year goals written out on a piece of paper, but I had a concept of what I needed to get done. And so for the first 5 years, I worked with goals, but they were in my head. After that, I started writing them down, and not just me. I was working with other people that were involved in accessibility to try to figure out these goals. So my first 5 year goals were: the first year, know the products. I had to know what we were sending out to the customers. I had to know their weaknesses. I used every product on every platform. I built test accounts. I was probably the only person at Intuit that had looked at every single product across all of our product lines. I had looked at the code. I understood where things were happening. I also understood the duplication between companies. I knew, for instance, we had a product that was built on 3 floors of a building. And I knew that on each floor of that building, they were using a different version of JavaScript of the same platform, because they didn't know what they were doing on each floor. But it took me, because I had looked at all their stuff, to say, do you guys realize that you're not using the same version? That's the kind of thing that you got to get to know. You have to use your own dog food. You have to use your products. So I spent the first year basically looking at every product. The second year, once I knew about the products, it was education and documentation. I went and met with all the teams. I gave them a 30, 60-minute meeting, showed them their product, how they can make it better. The third year, it was on focusing on early wins, building the community, automated testing, core product changes. The number one priority in year 2 and 3, we had 0 keyboard accessibility. Everything had outline equals none on focus. So the first thing we did was got rid of that CSS. So across the board, we were able to start building keyboard accessibility. In the year 4 was working with customers and contributors. We knew the product's weaknesses. We had started to make impact. We had the documentation, we had the training, we had the automated testing. So now it was time to start showing the product to customers and getting their feedback, and then taking their feedback back to the developers. I was afraid to do it at the very beginning because you need something that's usable, something that you can stand behind when you go to those customers. I'm not saying it was terrible at the time, but we needed something that I knew well enough that I could present. And then finally in year 5 was build the future. How do we think about how this is going to extend into the years? We also thought about metrics. Metrics is a request you get all the time, and it's really, really difficult to do metrics on accessibility. Automated testing will only get you about 40%. So what we did was we worked with Glinda. She came up with a top 10 list of what we needed to deal with based on what Intuit does. For instance, we focus on form inputs. That's a number 1 element. We don't focus on blinking images because we don't do blinking images. So that's where we kind of limited what we're looking at. For each of those 10 elements, you could get 0 to 5 stars. And then we took an average of those so that you knew that if you had like a 4.5 to 5, then you were in really good shape. If you had a 3 to 4.5, you were in okay shape. If you had below 3, you were in trouble. From there, we were able to create a database, and we update that database all the time. In this picture, these are 4 different products. The first product, it says good. It's green with a white text that says good. It has 4 out of 5 stars. And then there's an arrow, it's green and it's going horizontal, which means that from testing the last time it got an evaluation to this time, it stayed good. There's another one that says caution, it's in yellow. It has 3 out of 5 stars. And the yellow arrow is pointing up, which means that it's still 3 out of 5 stars, but it's improving. And then the fourth one has 5 out of 5 stars. It's good, but the green arrow is pointing up. That's a quick way for me to say that this product improved since the last time it had been tested. I'll also tell a quick story. I had this big project with our marketing site, and I knew that it was going to take a lot of commitment from the people. So I created these huge banners. They're about 2 feet by 4 feet. And on that banner, on that poster, I had all of these metrics, bugs that were open, changes over the last week, screenshots, what were the 5 biggest issues. And I printed those posters and I went to their building and I stuck them in their cafe. I stuck them in the hallways. I stuck them in the meeting rooms. And of course they freaked out because all of a sudden it's showing, this terrible situation. It wasn't terrible, but the worst case scenario. And then every week I came back in there with a new poster and I put it in front of them. So I was stacking them as each week you would have a new one on the front. And that visible metrics, that team completed the work early, and those posters became a badge of honor because they could see, like, every week we're making so many changes and so many improvements. Metrics can be really powerful, but you have to figure out how you're going to do metrics. Sagar Barabhaya, he works with me. He did a presentation, I believe, about 4 years ago at CSUN about metrics and accessibility. That should still be available somewhere, at least the slides. We also looked at automated testing. We've been a DQ customer for probably 10 years. So we've always used their automated testing server, but we've also incorporated ACTS at every stage of our development, from linting to builds, running them in the browser. Everywhere we can, we use linting services, we use testing. But we also let people know that testing is only going to get you about 40%. So we never want people to feel like they're comfortable just because their testing is 100%. And we also created a prioritization strategy. Luis Garcia, he works with us. He wrote an article for Intuit about setting priorities for accessibility issues. Most prioritization when you're in technology is, oh my gosh, the server's down. That's a P0. We've got to get the server back up. Most of your prioritization is based on, is the product available to customers? That's not necessarily applicable for accessibility. So it's up to you to come up with your own prioritization, something that works with your product teams and also works with you. So what Luis had suggested is that a P1 is interference. It's impossible to use. We had a P1 just recently where we found out on TurboTax there was a widget that had the wrong ARIA role, and it was not accessible to screen readers. So we set that as a P1, and we were able to get it fixed within 2 days and push to production. So if I can't complete a key part of functionality of a product, that's a P1. A P2 is that it's a problem, but there's a workaround. Like, let's say that a sub navigation's not working, but there's another way of navigating to a page. P3 is tedious, annoying to use. This might be images missing alt text if it's not an SVG, if it's just a simple image missing alt text. And non-barriers would be maybe how you could improve a component by better using ARIA. Might be color contrast on a disabled element. I'm not sure. You can come up with your non-barriers, but you should publish your prioritization, and you should use this prioritization consistently. And finally, well, not finally, but one of the big questions that my boss had for me was, what happens when Ted gets hit by a bus? And actually from year one, that was the question he would ask me once a month. What happens when you get hit by a bus? You can't build a program and not have some vision of how you're going to retire. Your job when you start this program is to leave the job. It's so that when you leave this company in a much better shape, and you've already developed your next person to come in and replace you. So that was a question that got asked many times. What happens when Ted gets hit by a bus? That drove a lot of things like documentation, setting up infrastructure, doing the training, the empathy exercises, hiring interns. All of that was part of becoming an answer for, what happens when I get hit by a bus. Hopefully I won't get hit by a bus. Hopefully I'll retire from Intuit before I get hit by a bus, but keep that in the back of your mind. Maybe it's not a bus. Maybe it's I don't know, a bicycle. Or if you're in San Francisco, maybe it's an electric scooter. One of the things I also recommend, budget expectations. We had to come up with this fairly early. I worked in the central technology team. I didn't work for a product. So I had a budget, but what could I spend the budget on? Could I take that budget and spend it on TurboTax? Well, if I spend all my budget on TurboTax, what does that mean for another product? So what we developed was a goal that I had a budget, but that budget had to impact the entire company, not a particular product. So I could pay for automated testing, sponsorship of conferences, education, online training, books, whatever I thought needed to be done to help out the entire company. But when it comes to a product, that product had to own their experience. So they had to pay for audits, they had to pay for VPATs, they had to pay for any kind of product specific work. So we've gotten started, and now it's time to, might be kind of the fun part, I think. You've got things going. So how do you start riffing on it? How do you start improvising? How do you start actually making the daily work more enjoyable? I can't remember who said it, but one person said, the strongest statement you can make is, I don't know. I learned this when I was a teacher. If a student asked me a question and I didn't know the answer, I learned very quickly that you don't try to come up with an answer on the fly, because ultimately you're going to be wrong. So one of the things I learned was the best thing you can say, I don't know, but I'll find out. So this is going to give you so much more confidence, and people are going to trust you so much more when you don't pretend that you know everything. And one of the things that people ask me, like, what is my best strength, I think, as a person, is that I like to think that I know what I don't know. I don't know JavaScript very well. I'm completely honest about that. I've never been a JavaScript expert. So I've always gone out and found people that know JavaScript really well. If a question comes to me about JavaScript and I don't know the answer, I can get that answer by reaching out to people. So know what you don't know, understand that you don't know everything, and be honest about it. When you do that, you're going to find conversations and people will respect you more. I've also talked about Intuit's Accessibility Champion program. We started this about 2 years ago. We just hit our 800th Accessibility Champion at Intuit, and I've got about 20 that signed up this week. We've been doing some promotions. A lot of companies have an Accessibility Champion program, and there are multiple stages to them. I do have a blog post about it, and basically it was written so you could take what we've done and set up your own champion program. Our goal was an extremely easy barrier to entry. You watch a couple videos, bookmark our site, join the Slack channel, make a commitment statement. That's all that's required to become a champion. Our goal is to get you hooked, get you so that you know where to find information, that you keep up to date. Now, if you're a designer or a developer, we ask you to then set up your computer for keyboard, Install some browser plugins like Axe. Do your first audit with Lighthouse. And then also create the commitment statement. There's a couple other things, but essentially for designers and developers, we want you to have your computer set up so you can test and you can learn more, so that you never have an excuse to say, oh, well, I didn't know how to test it for accessibility. Well, there it is, it's right with you. The other thing that's interesting, when I started accessibility, I started at a museum. I was the museum's website manager. Everything had to be Section 508 compliant. I didn't know what that meant. I learned about accessibility. I learned that it was this and this and this and this. I learned details, but I didn't really understand it until I met people that needed to use accessibility. When I met the first person that was blind who used a screen reader, that's when accessibility makes sense. So what I like to say is that you can teach accessibility, but you can't teach empathy. You have to develop empathy. And so one of the things we do at Intuit, we're a customer-focused company, but we develop empathy from the very beginning with customer interviews, video recordings, volunteer activities, community engagement. We have employee resource groups. You can create personas. You can have empathy exercises. One of the things we do is we give everybody a mask when we have boot camps. And we're not trying to teach them what it's like to be blind, because that would be wrong. We can't do that, especially in an hour. But what we want them to do is put the mask on and then learn how to use the screen reader. Because if you don't put the mask on, you never get the full experience at how a screen reader works. So we try to develop some empathy, and that we kind of touch them in the very beginning, but then when they join our community, when they join our Slack channel, it's like nonstop. You're constantly learning about the world. And we do a lot of customer outreach. On this picture, I have Lucy Greco, myself, Sagar Bharpaya, and I'm drawing a blank on the other guy's name. He flew out from India. He was doing some work on TurboTax, and he wanted to meet a customer that used TurboTax and see how they used a screen reader. So we went over to Lucy's house, and she did an audit. She basically used the product that he was developing for about, I think we spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours. He was then able to go back to India and share all of his learnings, working with the team. They actually made quite a few changes. Interestingly, one of the changes they made was from Lucy's husband, Mike, who came downstairs and he's like, oh, this is the problem that I'm always having. So customer outreach is critical. You've got to do that on a regular basis. Also remember that customers are not just external, they also include your developers and designers. We go and we sit down with them, we figure out, okay, you've got a problem on your page, you need to fix it. How are you going to get the information? Where is it a problem? So that we're also providing the right documentation. I'm realizing I'm running out of time. Not that I've ever been known to talk too much. I mentioned earlier how I knew that there was a product that had 3 versions of JavaScript. I also knew that we had about 50 versions of accordions, of drop-down menus, of carousels. Navigation was different everywhere. Because I had used all the products, I became the hub. I realized that we had no community of front-end engineers, so I created a front-end engineering summit just to bring all the front-end engineers together. And over the years, we've been able to consolidate the work that we're doing. So one of your goals as the accessibility person is that when you see something, you know who to connect them to. So it's like you're building this, oh, I've seen that being worked on over here, so why don't you two talk so that you can reduce the redundancy. This is not accessibility. This is just good programming. I also believe that we should avoid the me and I. I'm not a person that wants to take credit for other people's work. I think you need to give power to other people. So try to think about the royal we. When the accessibility team does something, when we have changes at Intuit, I very rarely say I'm almost always talking about the team and the we and this person and that person. Keep that in mind, because one of the parts of being an accessibility leader is building that community. Spotlight and celebrate people. It's also a key thing to not only let a person know that they did a great job, but their manager should know that they did a great job. Be judicious with that. I think in the last week, I've given out about 25 spotlights. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you're tired of telling people this has to be done because they can't prioritize it. It's legacy. There's problems that are complicated. Maybe it touches multiple repositories. There might come a time when you need to do open contributions. We had Sagar do a lot of open contributions. It also helped him understand the build system, the way that the product was built, the testing mechanism, the way they ran GitHub and all the everything else that was involved in it. Once he better understood how they were working, he was actually able to change the way we did automated testing and documentation. At the same time, he solved a huge amount of problems because he's an expert that's able to come in and fix old legacy problems. So think about when you're going to start open contributions and then encourage that across your accessibility team. Transparency is critical. We publish everything. If you write an email to 2 people about a project, about a problem, that should become a blog post. That should be something that you store on your intranet. This week it was high contrast mode. There was several conversations about high contrast mode, so that's going to become an article. SEO is your friend. Accessibility and SEO, all we care about is good, solid content that's easily discovered, marked up correctly. So get to know your SEO team. The SEO leader for TurboTax, I pointed out one day that they didn't have captioning on their videos. She immediately set up the program and went back and captioned all the previous videos and set it up so they get captioning going forward. That was because she's an SEO leader and she understood the value of captioning. So work with your SEO team, SEO meaning search engine optimization. And work with your employee resource groups. We're all in this together for diversity and inclusion. So we have an employee resource group for people with disabilities and their families, but we also work consistently across the Intuit Women's Network, the African American Ancestry Network, the New Engineer Network, all of that. So build your community by working together within all of these. And your goal is to hire more people with disabilities, become more diverse and more inclusive, and think about intersectionality. I'm almost done. I'm just saying that my time is close. Video makes a difference. They say a picture is 1,000 words. Well, if you can take a video, a screen capture or something of a button that doesn't work, or we had this great interview with the person and he was talking about, we were trying to figure out this flow. He was setting up a business, and in the middle of that flow comes an SVG image, scalable vector graphic image, and it had no alt text. And so he lands on the image and it just starts spewing out this string of numbers and characters. It was so long that it's like NVDA had to catch a breath. It's like NVDA slowly got, winded. He's sitting there pressing the escape key, to get past it. And our team was just blown away. It's like, oh my God, that's awful. I've never seen an image without an alt text that was that bad before. So we took that video, we've been sharing it to everybody. Every time there's a bug for no image alt text, that video gets shared with them. With that, I do want to leave open for questions. You can also reach me on, did that not go through? There we go. You can reach me on Twitter at Ted_Drake. My email is Ted_Drake@intuit.com. And my website with accessibility information is last-child.com.
Ted, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation. Before I go to the questions, I actually wanted to highlight a comment that Flora had made in the chat, and that's in regards to that "I don't know" statement that you had made. It's just so powerful in so many ways than one, and I just wanted to highlight that. But let's go ahead and jump into the questions. First one comes in from Mark. I agree with your point on giving the leadership team a safe space to connect with professionals with disabilities and discuss accessibility and inclusion initiatives. My question is, how can one connect with the leadership team? Because more often than not, they are not available to connect.
So first off, I think you need to have my answer to this. I walk right up to them, or if you can't walk to them, go right up to them in a social setting and say, "Hi, my name is Ted Drake. I'm the accessibility person for this company." It's good to have an intro. So what you might say is, you see them in the cafe or something like that. You go up to them and you say hi, or you send them an email, or you send them something on Slack. But it's nice to have an intro. It's like, "Hi, my name is Ted Drake. I'm the accessibility leader for Intuit. I just met a customer who is using QuickBooks. And it was amazing to see how they were using, the Bluetooth with aftershocks, and they were working with the customer. It's like, tell them a story. Give them a reason why they want to know you, something that they might be able to take and go to another meeting and say, I just found out about a customer. And this actually happened. I met Michael Hingson at an NFB conference, and he was using our Bluetooth card scanner. And he was telling me that it was the only one at the time that worked because of the headphone jack. We were the only ones that supported a Bluetooth headphone, I think is what he said. It's like 8 years ago. That was a story I could take back to them and say, this is something I've just discovered. So the worst thing that's going to happen when you go up to a leader with an interesting story is that you say, I don't have time right now. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. The best thing that's going to happen is that they recognize you and they start knowing that the next time you come up to them, that you're going to have an interesting story.
Great. Thanks, Ted. Next question that came in. How can a tiny group of employees who are not experienced with accessibility create an effective proposal that can convince leadership to consider the importance of accessibility?
Well, okay, so you're a tiny group. You have to make a proposal to leadership about making accessibility. What I did was I didn't make a big proposal. Keep in mind, this is a smaller company. This is not a company like Wells Fargo or Chase where you have to have compliance statements. If you're a smaller company, what you need to do is figure out chunks, get some small successes going so that you can start building upon them. I think you have to know your company, but I think if you spend too much time building a proposal, that could have been time that was establishing some successes and some proof of concepts. So it might be, look, here's how we were able to improve X. Now what we want to do is we can prove that. Now let's go forward. There is one thing I will say is that we have a product team, T-Sheets. They do time clocks. And one of the things about T-Sheets, it was set up with really good metrics. So they were basically able to pass a metric. They don't know anything about you, but they have a metric that this button was clicked with a keyboard. Simple enough. But they were able to show that when they fixed buttons on their site to be keyboard accessible, that they were able to show how quickly those buttons were discovered with a keyboard. And so they were able to start making metrics. This is a small team, just a few people working together that were able to create some metrics that said, look, when we fixed this thing, it took us an hour. It was based on a customer complaint. But when we pushed it live, we were able to see that now there's 250 businesses using that button that they didn't use before because it only worked with a mouse. So I would say don't, if you're worried about building a plan that's too big, then start working gradually. And once again, it depends on your company and your company's culture.
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Next question. What might accessibility look like for folks living with traumatic brain injury, chronic pain, fatigue, and or weakness?
First off, it's not going to answer all of those, but I just published an article on medium.com. It's under the Intuit design, and it's about sickle cell disease, how to learn from people with sickle cell disease to be a better designer. And that covers a lot of that. I'm a strong believer that you have to think beyond most of us when we're dealing with accessibility, we're dealing with blindness because it's something that you can test, it's something that you can build to, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problem for traumatic brain injury. So going back to that question, think about short-term memory loss. Where am I? How did I get to this page? What stage of the process am I in? If you're in TurboTax, for instance, and you're working on your federal taxes, it's a very clear you're at this part of the federal tax. This is the field that this is the form that you're working on. And so it's easy to get back to that form. So that helps with traumatic brain injuries, with short-term memory loss, with chronic pain and anxiety. You don't want surprises. You don't want frustration. You don't want mystery meat navigation where you have to move your mouse around in order to find a drop down. You don't want form inputs that are not clearly labeled. You basically want people to open the page. They know exactly what they need to do, and they can get it done without being frustrated. So those are some of those things that you can work on for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Ted. Next one's a short one. Simply put, what is an open contribution?
Oh, very simple. Open contribution. Let's say I work on product X. I see a problem on product Y. So I have the ability to go in and fix the code on product Y, commit the code, and then that code is accepted by product Y. So it's basically I'm open contributing to another product. It's similar to open source, but open source is I'm working on a public thing. Open contribution is internal.
Great. I'm going to merge these next two questions. Do you have any recommended tools for creating multi-year goals around accessibility success? And also, how do you decide those multi-year goals?
We use Google Docs simply because it's collaborative. So I would say figure out who you're going to be working with to build those goals. With our accessibility champions, we have 3 levels. There's the base level. Everybody can become a base level, level 1 champion. Level 2 are people that have done extra work. They've become the leaders of their products, the leaders of their location. And then the 3rd level is our subject matter experts. So we get the level 2 and the level 3 champions together at least once a year, and we create goals. And we do it with Google Docs so that everybody has the ability to leave comments, to add their goals. So my answer to that is something that's collaborative.
Okay. Ted, do you think an SLA for defect severity levels makes sense?
I think it makes sense if your company is the type that deals with SLAs. Okay. I'll tell you one thing that we have. What you'll find is if you have a company that has very strict SLAs, then teams get forced to do fudging. They may take a bug and turn it into a story. Or they may ask you, don't make that bug in production, make that bug in QA. We understand it needs to be done, but we can't do it this sprint. We want to do it next sprint. So SLAs are great, but they can also lead to, bending the rules. I think that I think it depends on your company and how your development environment is.
Okay. How do you think providing ARIA as a service benefits the accessibility of your product? Does that make the use of ARIA a requirement for the user?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. And the answer is ARIA has absolutely nothing to do with our product's accessibility. We do not use ARIA as a patch. I'm sorry, I'm not ARIA. I think you meant IRA.
I did mean IRA. Thank you for that clarification. Apologies.
We use a lot of ARIA. But no, IRA is not meant to solve problems on our product. In fact, about 95% of IRA calls, we don't know what you're calling IRA for, but we do know how many calls, how long the calls were in general, and categories like reading invoices or signing contracts, reading documents. And that was very clear that we established with IRA in the very beginning that this is not going to be a solution for our accessibility. This is for small business owners to do things like check their inventory or sign a contract or read a resume. So that's the answer for that.
Perfect.
I hope
Yep.
that's clear.
Thanks for the clarification. Nope, it is. Thank you. Stanton asks, when product accessibility initiatives start at the individual contributor level voluntarily, including business resource groups, what advice do you have to identify that inflection point of when there needs to be a formal accessibility team or leader?
It's a very good question. And I've actually worked with a number of people that have been trying to establish accessibility teams in their company. Um, every company is going to be slightly different. And to be honest, a lot of companies aren't going to understand the need until there's a crisis. So one of the things that you should do is um, understand your company's what makes your company tick. If you're working at a company where return on investment is critical, then you need to think about how am I going to prove a return on investment? For instance, maybe you can show that by working with this team to consider accessibility in the beginning, you solved the development time because they didn't have to go back and fix something. Or by updating the documentation on this product, we were able to reduce customer care. So maybe that's how you're going to do it. At Intuit, we're customer focused. And so what it took to get accessibility done, and this is a question for Lori Samuels, who set it up before me, but it's basically showing the customer impact. And by showing that there's a need for the customer, that was what was needed to get the project started.
Great. We have just a few minutes left. We don't have any other questions in the queue, but Ted, if it's okay, I'm going to ask one of my own. And
Sure.
in seeing your presentation, you mentioned getting hit by a bus analogy. Help us understand, and can you walk us through how you prioritize the list of things that needed to be done, right, in the event that you were removed from the equation?
So part of it was hiring interns. Um, by hiring interns, you're bringing in people that can focus on accessibility. A lot of it was the documentation. If I leave today, there's a lot of documentation. So there's not a running around trying to find an answer. People can find the answers. There was also building up the awareness across the company. The Accessibility Champion program has been great. I don't want to start like um, a challenge between everybody that's a champion to see who's going to replace me. But the fact is that if I leave today, we have several accessibility champions that can step in at any time and take over. And that's because it's not just a matter of knowledge. It's not just a matter of empathy or experience, but it's truly grasping what it takes to lead accessibility in a large company, to work with customers, to build good products, and to provide a community outreach and understanding. This has been as since the first year I joined Intuit, it has been a process.
Yeah. So we do have just a minute left, and we did have another question that just came in, so we'll wrap up with this one. Do you recommend do you recommend a accessibility champion program for anyone, or should we be more focused on a role-based approach?
It's a great question, and that's why I think accessibility champion programs have to be defined by your company. So some companies like Google, they have role-based where they have an accessibility leader for every product. They have an accessibility leader for Android. They have an accessibility leader for marketing. You have like some companies are going to have roles, and those people are going to have specific roles. Other companies are going to have more like an allyship program. So it's, let's have everybody learns about accessibility and everybody has that awareness. What we tried to do it into was a combination of the two. Let's have an allyship. Let's have a large base of allies. Right now it's at 800. But also give those allies the tools and the roadmap so that they can become leaders. And then from leaderships, they can become subject matter experts and they can become the next leader of, a whole business unit or whatever.
Great.
But I do think they're valuable. I think they're wonderful, great investment for a company, but you can't just say, I'm going to take this championship program and copy paste it. You have to think about your company.
Right. And I think that's where we'll leave it. Thank you to Ted Drake for just an amazing session, and thanks to everyone for attending. Enjoy the rest of AxeCon. Bye now.
Thank you, everybody.